back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Before we get into these Ultimate Fighter Season 26 finale predictions, I know there's a few of you, and just a few of you, that are wondering, whoa, how do you know who's going to be in the main event? When I went to UFC.com, it says to be announced versus to be announced. And I'm also watching the Ultimate Fighter Season 26, and I know that there's still one episode. Roxanne Modafferi still has to fight another person to determine whether or not she's going to be in the finale. So what do you know that we don't know full time? And I know it's just a few of you because the rest of you, like me, have actually not been watching this season of the Ultimate Fighter Season 26. The new champion or something, I think it's called, Justin Gaethje versus Eddie Alvarez are the coaches, which is probably part of the reason I'm not watching it. It just came out of nowhere, especially after watching such a great season of the Ultimate Fighter Season 25, Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw last season. When I heard these coaches announced, it just kind of, I don't know, it didn't draw my attention. It didn't have the same heat, the same rivalry, and the fighters in the house, the last one was Redemption, you know, it was a lot of people that we had seen before. The fighters in this house are a bunch of chicks that are, you know, fighting to be the inaugural women's flyweight champion, and a lot of these girls are like 2-2 professionally and 3-2 professionally, and that's part of the reason, as you see, I made a prediction on not only who's going to be in the main event, but also who's going to win the main event. Now, if you are keeping up with the Ultimate Fighter Season 26, you'll know that there's one episode left, and there's already one fighter that is announced in the main event, and her name is Nicco Montaño. So that's who's going to be fighting, who I believe is Roxanne Modafferi. Why do I pick Roxanne Modafferi to win in the last episode and also in the main event of the finale? Because Roxanne Modafferi is by far the most experienced fighter out of these three girls. I'm sorry, I did my predictions since I had all the information up. I don't know exactly the girl's name who Roxanne Modafferi is going to be fighting in this last episode to get to the finale, but I do know she's like 3-2 or 2-2 overall, as compared to Roxanne Modafferi, who's got like 23 wins and 7 losses or something around there. She's got over 20 wins, so she's by far the most experienced fighter. And the girl Nicco Montaño, who she's going to be fighting probably in the finale or possibly in the finale, also has like a combined 5 professional fights. She's like 3-2. So both of these girls have under 7 professional fights. Roxanne Modafferi's got like almost 30, if not more than 30 professional fights. So I'm picking her to get the win in the last episode of the season and also move on to the Ultimate Fighter finale and become the women's inaugural flyweight champion, Roxanne Modafferi. If she doesn't, if my prediction is wrong, shit's gonna be weird, because it's gonna be the UFC's inaugural flyweight champion is gonna have a total of like 6 professional fights or 5 professional fights at that point, and that's just gonna be awkward. I mean, it's not gonna be too awkward because how it became about off the Ultimate, you know, because that's how the champion was crowned, but it's just gonna be like, yeah, someone's gonna move in and take that belt real quick if somebody that's not named Roxanne Modafferi wins it, because these other two girls literally have like 6 professional fights, and that would just be interesting to be a UFC champion with like 5 or 6 professional fights. Roxanne Modafferi, as I said, she, you know, I think she's gonna get the win, so I guess we'll work that way from the main event. I usually do the predictions starting at the first fight of the night, but since I had to start off explaining that to the few of you who are actually caught that, because I know a lot of you guys didn't even catch that, like, oh, these are just predictions. So yeah, carry along. You weren't even fucking thinking about that main event right there. But with that being said, let's move to the co-main event of the night, which is, let me pull up my motherfucking notepad I was writing all of this on. It is Andrew Sanchez versus Ryan James. Ryan James is 9-2 overall, 1-2 in the UFC. Andrew Sanchez is 10-3 overall, 2-1 in the UFC. So Ryan James, he's on a 2-fight losing streak, with most recently a unanimous decision to Jack Marshman. His only win in the UFC was his UFC debut to Keith Barrett, who he outstruck, but he was taken down twice in that fight. Ryan James has 11 professional fights, so he's less experienced than Andrew Sanchez. and I'm picking Andrew Sanchez to win this fight. It's Andrew Sanchez. He's 2-1 in the UFC. He dominated Khalil Roundtree in the Ultimate Fighter finale, Claudia versus Joanna. He would be undefeated in the UFC 3-0, but because he was outstriking and out wrestling Anthony Smith, but he was knocked out in the 3rd round. So if he would have, just made it to the bell, if he wouldn't have got caught and got knocked out in that 3rd round, he would be undefeated in the UFC. Actually, very impressive. He had like 4 takedowns on Anthony Smith, and he was outstriking him, but he got caught in that 3rd round. So I'm picking Andrew Sanchez. I feel like he's had more success against tougher competition in the UFC, and he's also the younger, more experienced fighter. So Andrew Sanchez, I believe he's 29. Ryan James, I believe, is 36. I'm going off of memory here. And Andrew Sanchez also still has more professional fights, 1 more win and 1 more loss. So I'm picking Andrew Sanchez in the co-main event. Next, we move to Joe Soto. This is probably going to be one of my favorite fights of the night. I'm just really, really interested in this fight. Joe Soto versus the pikey Brett Johns. Joe Soto is 18-5 overall, 3-3 in the UFC. He's 30 years old with a 65-inch reach, and I bring that up because I told you I'm really interested in this fight. Brett Johns, I believe he had a 70 or 71-inch reach, so he's a longer fighter. He's the younger fighter. He's undefeated. Now, Joe Soto is the former Bellator champion. He entered the UFC on a 3-fight skid. Like, his first 3 fights in the UFC, he lost. And his first fight was actually a title fight versus TJ Dillashaw. Whenever Renan Barão fell out, Joe Soto jumped in. He was a huge underdog. He came out of nowhere, fought TJ Dillashaw. He lost that fight, went on to lose 2 more fights in the UFC, but now he's on a 3-fight winning streak since then with 2 submission wins. But most recently, Joe Soto had a unanimous decision over Ronnie Yahya. Now he's going to be fighting the pikey Brett John, who's 2-0 in the UFC. He's undefeated. He's outclassed both of his UFC opponents in wrestling. He scored 11 takedowns in his UFC debut to his opponent 0, and then he fought and that opponent during his UFC debut, when he scored those 11 takedowns, undefeated. It was Kwan Ho Kwok. So they were both undefeated fighters that fight, and on their UFC debuts, Brett Johns outclassed Kwan Ho Kwok. Most recently, Brett Johns, he scored 3 takedowns to 0 versus Albert Morales. So this is still going to be Brett Johns' most experienced UFC opponent. I'm picking him to win. It's going to be the pikey's first big test in the UFC, but he's coming in the younger, longer, undefeated fighter, and I'm leaning toward Brett Johns to win this fight. So I'm picking Brett Johns. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm definitely going to be tuned into this fight. But now, actually, I say I'm very, very interested in the Brett Johns fight, Joe Soto fight, but let me tell you the fight that I'm most excited for. Let me tell you about the fight that I cannot fucking wait for. Let me tell you about the fight that I'm a little scared for. Let me tell you about the fight that the fight of the night. Let me tell you about the knockout of the night. Let me tell you about my motherfucking dude, Sugar Sean O'Malley. I almost fucking screamed, but it's like 1 in the morning and there's my fucking brother's kids are asleep in the other room and shit. I got a roommate, so I didn't scream. If I would have shut this door though, I'd have been hyped as fuck right now for my boy Sean O'Malley. What the fuck you tell me? Sugar Sean's the Skinny Boys, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, motherfucking KO'd Alfred Kashkian in the first round to earn his UFC contract on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He's the first UFC fighter to comment on one of the motherfucking full-time videos. Fuck you, Tab Matt. I went crazy whenever I seen his knockout. Fucking then afterward, he smoked. He was smoking with Snoop Dogg. I did a video on that, and my boy commented and said he's the Skinny Boys. I said, yo, that'd be crazy if this is actually Sean O'Malley. I know some of y'all are like, what the fuck? Hey, I'm hyped. I'm telling you. I was like, that would be crazy if this is the real Sean O'Malley. He said it is. Yo, what's your Instagram? And I was like, oh shit. I was fanning out for a second. So I cannot wait for Sean O'Malley's actual UFC debut. He knocked out Alfred Kashkian, as I said, in the first round. I don't know if that counts as his UFC debut because it was on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, but he's going to be facing Onwere. I say I'm a little scared for this fight because Onwere's nickname. Let me explain. Onwere is 0-1 in the UFC, but his nickname is The Flash. Now, watching Sean O'Malley and being the fan that I am, you know, I've only seen his like last 2 fights, but still, watching Sean O'Malley, you know, he's got an unorthodox style where he kind of like keeps his hands low. So, you know, some people are worried, you know, when you listen to the commentary about Sean O'Malley, they're worried about how he keeps his hands low. And he even talked about how his coach used to not like his style, you know, because of how he keeps his hands low. And just, you know, to me, just anybody listening to overall MMA commentary and you know, stuff like Dan Hardy's breakdowns, Joe Rogan, stuff like that, you know, you hear as much as stylish as it is. I mean, it really reminds me of like an Anderson Silva. I mean, of course, to a much lesser extent, Sean O'Malley's, I believe, like 8-0 professionally. So he's definitely, and he's only like 22 years old, very young in his career. But the point is, he keeps his hands low, and going against a guy nicknamed the Flash, I mean, he don't motherfucking flash one of them hands up there and catch Sean O'Malley in the chin before he can put his hands up, you know what I'm saying, and defend it if you don't move out of the way. Now, Onwere, he's 17-6 overall, 0-1 in the UFC. As I said, he lost his UFC debut to Cody Stamann, where he was outstruck and taken down 8 times. But Onwere's like only last 3 losses are all to UFC fighters, even though 2 of those fights were outside of the UFC. Both of those guys that he lost to most recently, beside Cody Stamann, were Leandro Higo and Luke Sanders, who are both in the UFC, who have both made it to the UFC since then. So, I mean, I can't say I've seen Onwere's last fight versus Cody Stamann. I probably watched it, but it just doesn't stick out in my memory. But I sure am hoping Onwere comes in here and gets knocked out in the first round, and that's no disrespect. I'm just a motherfucking huge Sean O'Malley fan. What the fuck you tapping at, rolling till the wheels fall off? I don't give a fuck. I'm trying to see him come in here and get a first round knockout just so I can be the first one to motherfucking report on it. Fuck you tapping at. As always, first to report on the fucking fight results. I'm hyped. I can't wait. Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting December 1st in the second fight of the night of the main card, the Ultimate Fighter Season 26 finale. Let's go. Now, there's one more fight on the card we gotta talk about, but still, I can't wait for that. Now, this is a good time to tell you that this fight card is on December 1st, and then UFC 218 is on December 2nd. So there's going to be 2 UFC events in 2 nights next weekend. I believe this is going to be on Friday. UFC 218 is going to be on Saturday. This is going to be free, so you got no reason to not tune in and watch my boy Sugar Sean O'Malley motherfucker get a first round knockout. Alright, with that being said, I'm picking Sugar Sean O'Malley to win that fight. If you couldn't tell, it's a hard pick. I'm a little worried, as I said, because of his unorthodox fighting style. Keeps his hands down, and he's going against a guy nicknamed the Flash. But other than that, I'm using my heart, and I'm picking Sean O'Malley first round KO. I don't even usually call how fighters are gonna win, but first round KO. And if it happens, you heard it here first. And if it doesn't happen, you didn't hear it here. No, I'm just fucking around. Let's go to the first fight of the night. Eric Spicely versus Jared Meerschaert. All right, Eric Spicely is 10-3, 2-2 in the UFC. 31 years old, 73-inch reach. Whenever I bring up age and reach, it's usually because there's a discrepancy that I use to like make my decision. I don't just bring that up every time. So Gerald Meerschaert, he's younger, 29 years old, and he's also got a 4-inch reach advantage, 77-inch reach. So he's the younger, longer fighter here. But let's talk a little bit about Eric Spicely first. He lost his UFC debut to Sam Alvey. He went on to upset Thiago Santos via first-round submission, and then he also submitted another guy in the first round, Alessio De Chicaro, who's no longer with the UFC. But most recently, Eric Spicely lost via second-round submission to Antonio Shoeface Carlos Jr. So with that being said, Eric Spicely's 2-2 in the UFC, and he's going to be facing Gerald Meerschaert, who's 2-1 in the UFC. Gerald Meerschaert entered the UFC on a 2-fight win streak, both first-round submissions before being knocked out by Thiago Santos in the second round at UFC 213. If you go off of UFC math, Eric Spicely beat Thiago Santos and Gerald Meerschaert lost to Thiago Santos. You know, you would say, oh, how could you be picking Gerald Meerschaert? Well, good thing MMA math doesn't fucking really mean shit, and it doesn't ever really add up, because that's, you know, Eric Spicely arguably caught Thiago Santos with a submission. You didn't really get to see how the fight would have played out. Gerald Meerschaert, you know, he did get knocked out by Thiago Santos, but Thiago Santos ain't nothing to fuck. You must got an elbow. My girl walked in, my bad. But what I was saying, Thiago Santos ain't nothing to fuck with. So Gerald Meerschaert got caught. Otherwise, he would also be undefeated in the UFC, but he fought Thiago Santos as well as Eric Spicely. They both had different results, but I'm still picking Gerald Meerschaert to get this win. Another reason is 7 of Gerald Meerschaert's 9 losses have came via submission, and all 7 of those submission losses were like his first 7 losses in his career. His last 2 losses were a knockout to Thiago Santos and a decision, and since then he's really been winning. So and also his last 2 wins were via submission, so he's definitely improved his jiu-jitsu since he was losing via submission early in his career. He's also the younger, longer fighter, so I'm picking Gerald Meerschaert to get the win. It is what it is, man. Those are my predictions for the Ultimate Fighter finale. And again, the main event is not set yet. That's all. I'm predicting the episode. I'm predicting Modafferi to win in the final episode, and then also to win in the season finale. So if that doesn't happen, that's not even, you know, we're gonna have a fucking flyweight champion that's got 6 professional fights, so who really gives a fuck anyway? With that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what the fuck you tell me in the comments. I'm out. Let's go fucking shoot your shot on Mally. Let's go!
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.